Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 2 of the Christmas puppy ornament tutorial. This is the Christmas puppy ornament that we are making. It is so cute with all the puppies and the paws and the hearts and the trees. And today we're going to be making the unit called Sweet Puppy. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, that's okay. You can do these out of order. I'll have that video listed down below in the description. That way when you finish this one, you can go back and watch that one. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we'll be using in today's video are all Miyuki Delicas. I have opaque tan, opaque black, matte metallic bronze gold iris, bright copper plate, dyed silver lined red, and silver lined green. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this tan, black, brown, copper, red, and green. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire thread in the color Crystal, and this is a 4-pound thread. You could also use a 6-pound thread. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. You could also use a size 11 or a size 12. For implements, I like to use my long nose pliers to hold on to my thread at the end of the video, and then I cut my thread with scissors. And then today I'm going to show you how I use the fire method to end the tail. So we just need to thread our needle with about 3 feet of thread, and then we can get started. So now I have threaded my needle and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 3 black beads. And then we're going to take our 3 beads and we're going to pull it down to the bottom of our thread, leaving about a 6-inch tail. Now let's tie a square knot. So cross over on the top and pull the tail through, and then cross over on the top again and pull the tail through. Now we have 2 loops. Let's put our 2 fingers in the lower loop, the one that has the beads in it, and then we're going to tug on the tail thread and the long thread until that top loop turns into a knot. Now, I'm not going to touch the thread to the flame, but I am going to get it super duper close so that it melts the tip. And it turns the tip into this teensy little knot. Now, keeping our 2 fingers in the loop, we're going to be pulling on the long thread while we're twisting the loop until that knot at the end of the tail touches the long thread. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail and just pull that knot all the way down to the beads. And it turns the beads into this teensy little triangle, and that completes row number 1. So you'll notice that the knot is kind of right in between the 2 beads. So what we want to do is tug our thread over to one side so that it looks like the knot is coming out of one of the beads. It also looks like the thread is coming out of that bead. So now we're ready to pick up our next 2 beads. Let's pick up 2 tan beads. And since it looks like we're coming out of this bead with our thread, let's sew through the one that the thread doesn't look like it's coming out of. And now let's try to get our beads to sit right on top of the ones that are below them their buddies. So the new beads are sitting right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 more tan beads. And our thread is coming out of this bead, so let's sew through the next bead. And once again, try to get our new beads to sit right on top of their buddies. Now let's pick up 2 tan beads again. And we're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next bead, and this time we're going to sew through its buddy as well. Sewing through 2 beads means that we are stepping up, putting our thread in position to start the next row. So now we have completed row number 2 and we're ready to start row number 3. Let's start row number 3 by picking up 2 tan beads. And we're going to sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up 1 tan bead. And we're coming out of this bead right here. You'll notice that the next bead is set downward a little bit. We're going to skip that downward bead and we're going to sew through the one that's poking up. So we're skipping the down bead and sewing through the up bead. Now let's pick up 2 tan beads and sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up 1 tan, and we're once again going to skip the down bead and sew through the up bead. Now let's pick up 2 tan beads and sew through the next. And now we'll pick up 1 tan bead. This is the last bead in this row, so we're going to skip the down bead and sew through the up bead and also sew through its buddy. Sewing through those last 2 beads means that we are stepping up, and now we are ready to start row number 4. Let's start with 2 copper beads and sew through the next. Then 1 tan and sew through the up. 1 tan and sew through the up. 2 tan beads and sew through the next. One tan and sew through the up. 1 tan and sew through the up. 2 tan beads and sew through the next. Always making sure that those beads are sitting right on top of their buddies. 1 tan and sew through the up. And 1 tan bead, and this is the last bead in this row, so we'll sew through those last 2 beads. And now we are ready to start row number 5. Let's start with 2 copper beads. Then 1 tan. 1 tan, 1 tan, 2 brown beads, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 brown, 2 brown beads, 1 tan, 1 tan, and 1 tan, and sew through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 2 copper beads, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan and 1 black, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 black and 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, and 1 tan. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 2 tan beads, 1 copper, 1 black, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 2 tan beads, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 brown, 2 tan beads, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 black, and 1 copper. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and now we get to start row number 8. Let's start with 1 tan and 1 green, one copper, one tan, one copper, one tan, one brown, one black, one green and one tan, one black, one copper, one copper, one copper, one copper, one black, one green and one tan, one black, one brown, one tan, one copper, one tan, and one copper. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and now we get to start row number 9. Let's start with 1 brown and 1 green, one tan, one copper, one tan, one copper, one brown, one brown, one tan, one green and one brown, one tan, one brown, one copper, one brown, one copper, one brown, 1 tan, 2 green beads, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 tan, 1 copper, 1 tan, and sew through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 10. Let's start with 1 tan and 1 green. One green, 1 tan, 1 copper, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 black, 1 green, 1 green and 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 copper, 1 copper, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 brown, 2 green beads, 1 tan, 1 black, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 copper, 1 tan, and 1 tan. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 11. Let's start with 2 tan beads, 1 green, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 black, 1 tan, 1 green, 2 tan beads, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 2 tan beads, 1 green, 1 tan, 1 black, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 copper, 1 tan, 1 red, and 1 tan. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and now we get to start row number 12. Let's start with 2 tan beads, 1 tan, 1 green, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 green, 1 tan, 2 tan beads, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 2 tan beads, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, and 1 tan. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and that completes our 12 rows of our triangle, and our puppy is looking very cute. If this is the first triangle that you've done with me, you'll see that I always add connecting beads on some of the sides of our units. And this particular unit, we are going to have no connecting beads on this side, but we are going to have connecting beads on this side and on this side. So we also need to cap our corners. So let's start by capping this corner with 1 tan bead. And it turns this corner into a little point. Now what I like to do is turn my triangle over, and I'm going to start sewing through each bead all the way up, 1 row at a time, so as to hide our thread, right? 1 bead at a time, and I always follow this quadrant line right here, and our goal is to get to this bead right here. So while we're sewing up 1 bead at a time, 1 row at a time, this is usually when I ask the question of the day or an emoji of the day, and I think I need to change this to just the emoji of the day because I'm always doing emojis, but sometimes I have questions, right? Today's emoji is going to be a puppy or a dog. So if you would take a moment, pause the video and comment a puppy or a whole bunch of puppies, or maybe as many puppies as you have or you have owned, or your neighbor owns, or something like that. That would be super cute. I love seeing those emojis and any comments that you might have in the comments. I do read them. And yeah, it just puts a smile on my face to see that you have gotten this far in the video, and you know, that you're playing along because this is like a bead along, right? Bead along, play along. Alrighty, so we are now over on this corner coming out of our corner bead. So let's cap this corner with 1 tan bead. And now we're going to be adding our connecting beads on this side. So let's start with 1 tan. Then 1 tan. One red. 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, and 1 tan. Now we are at our third corner. Let's cap it with 1 tan bead. And now we will add beads up this side. So let's start with 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 brown, 1 brown, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, 1 tan, and 1 tan. Now let's sew through this corner bead, and then we will sew up 7 beads. 1, and I like to follow this quadrant line. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, while I'm thinking this, I was thinking, what if you lived right next door to a kennel? You would have so many puppies in that comment line. Okay, this is how I entertain myself. Alrighty, so now we are going to do what I like to call the zigzag. So I'm coming out of the top of this bead. Let's turn directions and sew in the opposite direction down the next bead right next to it. And then sew up the bead right next to that one. Now let's sew up 2 more beads or 2 more rows, 1 and 2. And let's do another zigzag. We're coming out of the top of this bead, so let's sew down the bead right next to it, and then sew up the bead right next to that one. Now we'll sew through 2 more beads, 1 and 2. And the reason we do those zigzags is because we want to make sure that we're weaving our thread so that the beads that we put on last aren't going to come loose when we connect our units together. So I feel that they are super secure. They're not going to come loose. So now let's cut our thread. So holding on to the thread with our long nose pliers, and then getting our scissors as close to the bead as possible without cutting the bead, let's just snip off the thread. And that completes our unit Isn't our puppy, our sweet puppy, so cute? I love him so much. Alrighty, you only need 5 of these units to complete the project, so go ahead and do this 4 more times, and I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.